Hello, my friends. Hey, I want to ask you, do you think there is a shortcut to spiritual enlightenment and spiritual embodiment? And if there were, would you take it? And I say I would. If there is a shortcut, hey, I'll just go right, get on that train and just get there ASAP. And I know that there are many, many, many of us who have tried that, and somehow it doesn't really work. We all seem to come back to the parts of us that we have disowned and put out to the side as being separate. So today I want to talk about uh, the spiritual embodiment and how that also relates to spiritual bypassing, and maybe even ask you which one are you on right now? And do you need to change course? Do you need to jump on? Do you need to leave the bypass, right? The bypass is kind of the shortcut, right? Here we go. And then we think, oh, I can just go, boop. But then there's all this stuff, and it's not going to go away because we have pushed it outside of oneness. And what does that mean? That means duality. So we're still in duality. What a bummer, huh? When I started on my spiritual journey many years ago, I didn't know anything about this. I had my big opening and it was like, wow, so much light coming in, unbelievable. And it lasted for several months. And then the door was shut and I was left in hell. And the hell, of course, was all that unresolved trauma, beliefs, emotions, all the stuff that we all bring in to our experience because we're born into a place of duality where oneness does not exist. Duality exists here, and that's why we have all this struggle. And of course, the longing is to come back to oneness, and naturally so, because it is our natural state. But anyway, I had this big awakening, and then I went into the deepest hell for about 5 months. Had no idea what it all meant, what happened, where did God go? Did God leave me? You see, there was Pernilla here and God there, and there was a huge gap. And I stayed with that belief that God left me, God didn't care about me, there was something wrong, I made a mistake, blah, 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 blah. All the things we all carry deep in our psyche based on separation. And it took me many, many years to really come to a place of a deeper understanding of it. And then there was still a long, long journey to start embodying what I had realized. So it's like the light comes in, and then all the darkness just started coming to the surface. All the unintegrated parts of us that live in every single one of us. And they all want to come home. They want to come home to the oneness, and rightly so. I mean, bringing compassion to these parts instead of trying to bypass them and suppress them and ignore them and judge them and reject them and all the things we do. You can see that whole way of engaging with them is total duality. It has nothing to do with love, with oneness, or with what we want. What we want that lives inside of us as a deep longing. And that's what we need to get in touch with. I have talked a lot about the longing, and you're always welcome to join my monthly online gathering the first Tuesday of the month, and I'll put the link in the description. But here we are, right? There's the spiritual embodiment, and then there's the bypass, and then there's probably a lot in between. If we have tried the bypass, and I hear so many people talk about this, not that they call it the bypass, but they have tried everything, and they're stuck. They don't know how to move forward, and they have all these traditions they may have been following, and just so much work has been done, and they have not done the part that we kind of all want to avoid. That's why I say, if there is a shortcut, I would take it, because it's a lot of work. It's a long journey to sink into all these layers where we have separated ourselves from who we truly are. And I'm not an expert on this, but it just feels like we have to integrate every single part of them, so we realize that we are one, that we are not, there's not me and then there's these parts of me. It's kind of extending ourselves and realizing that these parts are me, but I have just pushed them out and I don't want to have anything to do with them. And you can hear how unloving that is. So the bridge from, if you have been doing a spiritual bypass, and you may not even know that you have been doing it or are doing it. I hear it all the time. People are not aware that this is actually something. And so, but when you start understanding that the bypass is really bypassing all the feelings, the emotions, the painful memories, good memories too, probably, if it's something that we are still identified with and have some kind of a relationship with that is not serving who we are. That is what we're trying to bypass, because let's face it, who wants to go through all that pain again? And for what reason? I mean, what is the goal? What is the point of starting to feel all these painful memories and painful feelings again? It's like, no, I'm done with that. That's in the past, water under the bridge. Let me get on with life now. I'm done with that. And of course, there is a part of you that is fully done with it. I understand, the part that I don't want to repeat that. I don't want to let it impact my life anymore. I just want to live my life, let's say. Maybe you can recognize that saying, I don't want to live my life. I want my life back. I don't want to engage in that anymore. What's the point? If I start crying, what's the point of crying? It doesn't change anything anyway. So that's that separate part of us that still lives as if it's out there, that we have not brought in or integrated. And that's why, of course, self-love is the best way to bring it back in, but it has to be done in a right way. So we don't get lost in just loving all our parts, because then there's still me loving all these parts, and then we can get lost in that. So the journey is not easy, and that is why so many of us, it's taken us such a long time. I mean, my awakening, gosh, in Denmark, when was that? In 87. And it's taken me many, many years. I feel much freer and much more at peace today than I ever have. But it's been a gradual deepening and a gradual melting those parts that felt separate. So they just melt into the oneness. And then I'm actually experiencing more of who I truly am. It's not like, oh, that has to go away for me to be free, so I'm going to bypass it. Then you still live in duality. And it's really important to understand how we do that and that we do that, so we can start seeing it. And it's actually not serving us or anybody else. It just keeps this world of duality running, with everybody separating themselves from ourselves, and then we separate ourselves from others, and then we get all this polarity going, and the world continues being a dual experience, with lots of pain and suffering and separation. So, spiritual embodiment, as far as I know it on my journey, Actually, I also want to say when I started out with one of the spiritual teachers here in America, um, I remember that I had started the Hakomi training already. And Hakomi is very much about embodying and being present with and feel and, bringing it inside and allowing it to express itself. So it's an inner exploration of what is still living is there as separate, our core beliefs, our core traumas. And Hakomi really helps bring that home. And then with the spirituality, when I started that, going to these satsangs, I just really saw so much bypassing, not on purpose, but that was just kind of the flavor there. So in that way, I feel really blessed that when I started the non-dual traditions and satsang, I really had a nice balance with Hakomi. And that's why I couldn't just buy into when people say, "Oh, just don't accept it." So in that not accepting, there was a pushing it away, and it just didn't resonate with me. And that's also why I eventually wrote my book called Imagine Being Kind to Yourself. And I'll also put the link to that book down in the description if you want to check it out. So I was lucky in that way that I had both sides, that I was never tempted to do the spiritual bypass. I'm not saying I didn't do it probably unconsciously, but it was not something I was like, oh, no, no, no. But there comes a point when you have done enough work with yourself where this hypnotic suggestion that you're not good enough, something wrong with you, whatever it is, all these beliefs, it just gets so boring because it's just a suggestion. And at a certain point, you just know that it's not true. So it's not that I'm pushing it away. It's just like, I'm done. I'm not going to touch that. We talked about not touching things. And then eventually I don't know, you just start melting into yourself and you just well, I should speak for me. I just become more and more myself and feel more and more at peace with myself. I feel more and more at peace with the world because it's all the same. So the more I just live from this place of embodiment, it just gets more peaceful. But I also want to say about spiritual embodiment, it's kind of an oxymoron in a way, because, the infinite spirit everywhere, how is that ever going to fit into my little finite body, right? So it's kind of a joke. But we need to use some words. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to bring spirit into my body. It's more like, no, spirit is already my body. It's just for me to include all the parts that I have left out in the field. And when I stop pushing them out, then the embodiment of spirit that I already am just starts expanding more in my experience. It's not that, okay, I'm going to drill a little hole in my crown chakra and then God can come in, right? I don't think it works that way. Maybe that would be one of the shortcuts. Anyway, it's all about self-love in such a simple way. And I don't know why self-love has been I don't know, it's been such a misunderstanding. It's not like we have to do something. It's more like we have to stop doing something. And that is to push all these parts outside of ourselves and disown them. And then at some point, they need to be integrated back. And we do that by kind of unhooking the gates or the fence that they have to stay out there. So we basically, and that's when I talk about the unhooking from the matrix, unhooking from the dream. When we start unhooking, we dissolve that fence that we have built around us, and then all these parts have to stay out there. Once they all come in, it's almost like a party or a feast where everything is welcome, and then it can finally relax and not feel like it needs to be out there. So the bottom line is to really get a deeper understanding what true self-love is. It's basically just extending who we really are at the core, and extending that out to all the places, all the parts of ourselves that we have denied to be part of that party, to melt back, to let the little frozen drops melt back into the ocean. It's not like the drops have to stay out there, or the frozen drops, so that the ocean can be whole. The ocean is always whole. And when these little frozen drops starts melting, then they just start experiencing that which has always been here. And that's a different way of talking about embodiment. All right, my friends, thank you so much.